subscribe to Dino World's channel. This is Creepy Fridays. Even though it is Friday, it costs nothing, guys. And non-subscribers, subscribe, because if you're watching my video, just like for you to listen to subscribe. Thank you.
Watch TV from across the room with the same pair of glasses you
Growing up in Portland, Maine, I always looked up to my big brother Tommy. He was funny, he was brave, and he was by far the best player on his high school football team. He was so good that his coaches were talking about scholarships by the time his senior year rolled around. But Tommy had other plans, and in 1964, Growing up in Portland, Maine, I always looked up to my big brother Tommy. He was funny, he was brave, and he was by far the best player on his high school football team. He was so good that his coaches were talking about scholarships by the time his senior year rolled around. To fly his bird back was destined for the seminary. Joshua had just been under the weather. But when I next saw him at Sunday school, he still looked very pale, and he seemed much more timid than usual. After giving the kids some
These are the top 5 animals that look totally fake, but
Whoa! Before you
Today I'm going to be telling you 5 horrifying and just plain f***ed up stories of people whose lives were taken while they were camping. I've honestly been avoiding making this video because, well, I love camping and I don't like to think that something horrifying like this could happen while I'm doing it. And while you are certainly far safer on a camping trip than you are walking down just about any city street, it is also true that on rare occasions, people, sometimes even entire families, go out camping and never return alive. These stories are so rare, but they are also very real. And so with that said, let's head to the beautiful coast of Northern California. And by the way, if you found yourself watching a few of my videos now, you must hit that subscribe button to cover your admission on this trip to Northern California and beyond with me. You'll also be helping us reach our goal of 1 million subscribers. I don't know, I think that's a pretty fair deal. On August 14th,
level up your game night. Get paid to play games. Go to TestraUp and choose a game to play. There's a bunch to choose.
2004, a young couple settled in for the night at Fishhead Beach in Jenner, California. Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen had tried to book themselves a room at a motel in the area, but this motel apparently didn't have any rooms open. The couple just so happened to have some camping gear with them, and so rather than finding another hotel or driving further, they just decided to choose a peaceful spot on the beach to rest their heads that night. Unfortunately, things at their campsite on the beach wouldn't remain peaceful for very long. That very same evening, there was a deeply disturbed man driving up the highway along the coast. This man had been suffering from mental health delusions for years, and he had also been arrested multiple times for violent crimes against humans and animals. He had exhibited every warning sign possible, and yet despite this, he was still free, roaming throughout the world, and on this particular night, he just so happened to pull over and wander down to the same beach that Cutshall and Allen were camping on. This was a disaster waiting to happen, and the details are extremely disturbing. And with that said, things are about to get really dark topic. And before we get there, I do just want to keep things light for a moment longer and tell you about Fume. Fume is the sponsor of this video, and I'm just going to let you know that this video would not have been possible without them. And I don't just say that because they're the sponsor, but I say that because Fume has been so incredibly helpful over the last month or two that I've been using it in keeping me focused while I write these videos for all of you. Fume is what you need to help you break your bad habits. It's an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that fills the void of your bad habits in a natural, guilt-free way. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit hesitant about Fume when I first learned about it, but like I said, I've come around to absolutely love it. First of all, they have a bunch of amazing flavors. I've tried all of them. They're all great, and I really think that pretty much anyone is going to be able to find a flavor that they like. And second of all, the reason that I love it so much is because, well, I'm a fidgeter, and this thing right here is a fidgeter's dream. I mean, it has this adjustable airflow dial here, which is, it just feels so nice in your hand. It's also got like a magnet right there. I love to just kind of fidget with it while I'm writing, and of course you can breathe through it as well. And of course it's also super helpful when you're trying to de-stress while you're breaking your bad habit. And speaking of that, stopping is something that we all put off because, well, it's hard. But switching to Fume is easy, it's enjoyable, and, well, if you didn't get the memo already, it's super fun. So please head over to tryfume.com/KyleHatesHiking. You can also scan the QR code that's on the screen right now if you're watching on a TV. And be sure to use code KyleHatesHiking, which is going to get you 10% off when you buy the Journey Pack. One more time, that's tryfum.com, code KyleHatesHiking. When you use that, you're going to get an additional 10% off your order. And so thank you so much to Fume for sponsoring this video. And with that said, let's get back into the stories. On August 14th, 2004, Sean Gallen was experiencing a mental health crisis as he drove along Highway 1 in Jenner, California. He spotted a pull-off on the side of the road, and when he did this, for whatever reason, he decided to take it. He got out of his vehicle and he wandered down to the beach. And when he got there, he noticed Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen sleeping there. And Gallen assumed that the couple were homeless, and he also recalled seeing some no camping signs. And these factors, combined with his volatile mental state at the time, caused him to lash out in a rage. He went back to his car, grabbed his gun, and then he returned to the beach. Tragically, I think we all can kind of figure out what happened next. 4 days later, a helicopter from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office was patrolling for an unrelated case when it spotted the slain bodies from up in the air. Investigators quickly learned that the couple were not local, but were actually visiting the area from the Midwest. Lindsay Cutshall was 22, and Jason Allen was 26, and they were both in the area because they had been working at a Christian summer camp. And what's perhaps most tragic about this story, I mean, it's all tragic, but this couple was actually engaged at the time, and they were planning on being married only a few weeks after they were killed when they would return home. A few days after the killings, Sean Gallen was arrested after he had been found wandering along a different beach carrying a stolen gun. This immediately made him a prime suspect, but unfortunately, investigators didn't have enough solid evidence at the time to prove that he committed this crime. In a strange twist, the firearm that he was found carrying was actually not the same one that was used in the murders. Gallen was still a suspect, however, and he was actually repeatedly investigated over the coming years, but it wasn't until 2017 that the police finally nabbed him. And honestly, the circumstances around this are just as tragic as the 2004 crime itself. Sean Gallen would unfortunately go on to kill again, and this time it was, unbelievably, it was his younger brother, dude. After this, he was finally arrested, and during an interrogation, he admitted to killing Cutshall and Allen some 13 years earlier. Sean Gallen and his legal team has repeatedly blamed Gallen's mental health issues on a bad drug trip that he took in 2001, which is bizarre. He apparently took a large dose of LSD and then he was just
That's his
never the same afterwards, apparently. In 2019, Gallon was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. My heart goes out to Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, and of course, all of their friends and their families. Their murder pretty much came out of nowhere from a man, by the way, who they had never met and never even interacted with. But that was not the case for this next chilling story. In this story, the killer actually befriended his victims before doing the unthinkable. On November 14th, 2015, a blended family of 7 began a camping trip on private property that they had recently purchased. They would have had no way of knowing this, but a drunken madman was emotionally attached to that very same piece of land, and this strange attachment was about to boil over. A man named Thomas Camp had purchased this piece of property in Anderson County, Texas, in August of 2015. Now, my understanding is that there was no permanent structures on the property, at least not yet, but Camp had been using the remote spot for camping trips. For this particular trip, he had invited a host of people to join him, including his 2 sons and his girlfriend, as well as his girlfriend's grandparents and his girlfriend's son. At some point earlier in the day on November 14th, a truck belonging to somebody in this group, I'm not exactly sure, had become stuck in the mud on the property. And it's at this point that they were approached by a 33-year-old man on a tractor named William Hudson. Things didn't go sour immediately with Hudson. Apparently, he actually befriended the group, and he even helped them pull the stuck truck out of the mud, and eventually he actually went back to the campsite with the family and shared a few drinks with them. And yet, despite these friendly interactions, Hudson did apparently share his disappointment that the property's former owner had sold it to Camp, and it's also been reported that Camp was aware of Hudson's, fondness of the property, and even went as far as apparently putting up a gate to try to keep him out. This gate was apparently broken and, cut through on the day that we're talking about here. Apparently, William Hudson was under the illusion that since he had spent so much time on the land years previously, that he was somehow entitled to it. He was enraged that the land had been sold and that he was now being denied access, despite the fact that the new owner was still being quite nice to him, let's be honest. And thus, later on that night, William Hudson snapped. He went on a killing spree, and by the end of the night, 6 of the 7 campers were dead. The lone survivor, Cindy Johnson, actually hid from the gunman and was the first person to alert the authorities about the massacre. She later revealed that some of her husband's last words were actually when he called out to his killer, saying, quote, "Why? Why are you doing this? I thought we were friends." Sheriff Greg Taylor described the scene as, quote, "straight out of a horror movie. It's like something you'd watch on Halloween night." The authorities wasted no time at all, and it didn't take very long for them to zero in on William Hudson, and he was arrested the very next day. He was reportedly still wearing the very same blood-soaked clothing that he had worn while he committed the crimes. A background check on Hudson revealed that he was an extremely troubled individual, and just like the first story I told you, there was plenty of warning signs that something bad was bound to happen. Hudson's ex-wife was so afraid that he was going to kill her that she had actually gone out and gotten a restraining order against him. He had also threatened to kill his ex-wife's dog, and he had multiple arrests for various offenses on his rap sheet. Ultimately, William Hudson was found guilty for his brutal crimes, and I won't get into it, but he was given the death sentence. The jury deliberated for less than 30 minutes before giving their verdict. And my understanding is that Hudson is still alive and he still sits on death row to this day. The victims of this deranged and senseless rampage were 23-year-old Nathan Camp, 21-year-old Austin Camp, 45-year-old Thomas Camp, 40-year-old Hannah Johnson, 76-year-old Carl Johnson, and 6-year-old Cade Johnson. Man, may they all rest in peace, and my heart goes out to any of their surviving family members. I mean, it's just insane. This guy basically wiped out an entire family, and unfortunately, this wasn't the only time that a family was targeted by a killer while they were camping. From 2016 to 2018, a state park in Southern California was terrorized by a deranged survivalist with absolutely zero regard for human life. And the scariest part about this, at least in my opinion, is that it wasn't until a camper was killed in cold blood that the authorities finally connected the dots and arrested the man who would later go on to be known as the Malibu Sniper. Malibu Creek State Park is located less than 30 miles from downtown Los Angeles, making it a convenient location for city residents to get away from the traffic and the concrete and into some fresh air and some nature. The park is also a popular filming location for movies and TV shows since it's so close to Hollywood. In 2016, a wildlife biologist was sleeping in a hammock at the park when randomly, seemingly out of nowhere, he was struck in the arm with a bullet. And then only 5 days later, an anonymous person who was sleeping in a car nearby the park was also shot at. Fortunately, both these individuals survived, but it served as a chilling reminder that the violence that is usually contained to the city limits could easily spread, over into the surrounding areas. 3 more cars were shot at in the area in 2017, and a string of burglaries were also committed. And then in mid-June of the following year, that's 2018, a Tesla driving just outside of the park was also hit by gunfire. There was a clear pattern of crime and violence in this area, and yet despite this, my loose understanding anyways is that the authorities believed that all these events were actually unrelated. That belief would quickly come crashing down, however, because on June 18th, 2018, 35-year-old Tristan Baudet was shot dead while laying in his tent with his 2- and 4-year-old daughters at Malibu Creek State Park. Fortunately, the 2 girls were not hit, but this senseless crime sent those that frequented the park, as well as the residents in the surrounding area, into a frenzy. And for a few months, the authorities had no idea who committed this murder. But then, a few months later, this time in October, authorities spotted a...
I think they're trying the doors.
On May 6, 2019, YouTuber Connor Kelly posted a video of him exploring an abandoned McCoy gold mine in the Nevada desert. However, what was supposed to be nothing more than a fun adventure with his family quickly turned into a disturbing experience, one that would likely stay with the group for the rest of their lives. The exploration of this mine started off quite normal, with the group staying silent to avoid causing an accidental cave-in as seen by the text they put on screen. However, after about 1.5 minutes of treading deeper into the mine, Connor noticed something strangely reflective on the path ahead.
So, do you see that reflection? They're trying to...
Check it out.
Oh.
Oh, Jesus, what? It's a shoe.
Oh,
Look, is that like a fossil? Dead animal or human?
okay. Wait, don't move, Wyatt.
What they found reflecting back at them was a shoe amongst many more in a massive pile with random bones scattered throughout.
That's a bone right there. Actually, there's quite a few bones in this.
What made this pile even more odd was the sheer variety of shoes on display. Many of them were clearly very modern, while some were models that were released over 30 years ago. How could such a random assortment of shoes end up in an abandoned gold mine in the middle of nowhere? Things took an even darker turn when the group ventured further into the cave and found a bunch of bones, including a relatively intact spine.
So this is water flow. It is getting great. So we can't trust this.
By this point, the group was growing increasingly unsettled by these disturbing discoveries, prompting them to leave the cave as quickly as possible. And that's where the original video ends, without any explanation or resolution. Connor didn't provide any more information in the video's description or in the comments. He posted 4 more videos after this, but none of these videos included any updates on the disturbing encounter either. So, what's going on here? One of the first things that comes to mind is that this mine was the collection spot for a serial killer. This would explain both the shoes and the bones. A top comment on the video also backs this theory, stating, "If you ever listen to the Missing 411 videos, you know shoes are a major component of missing or abducted people. This sent chills down my spine." Which is true. A statistical analysis of the Missing 411 data shows that over 15% of the cases involve absent shoes. However, this theory isn't entirely likely. For starters, I couldn't find any news reports regarding this mysterious pile of shoes, which is odd since judging from the number of shoes, this supposed killer would have had hundreds of victims. If this pile had such a violent history, it probably wouldn't go unnoticed by the media. More importantly, many people on the internet agree that the bones in the video are not human. The group in the video reaches the same conclusion when looking at the bones for the first time.
No, it looks like a cow or a horse. Way too big for a human.
Put simply, the odds of this being a serial killer trophy cave are very low. But given the animal bones scattered throughout the area, it's possible it was the feeding spot of a predator like a mountain lion. Though, while that might explain the bones, it offers no clues about the pile of shoes. One theory I haven't seen anyone else bring up is that the shoes might have ended up there because of flooding. You see, the McCoy mine where the video was filmed is located in Lander County, and from what I can find, that area is quite prone to flooding. So it's entirely possible that someone dumped their sneaker collection in the middle of nowhere to get rid of it, only for it to be carried in the abandoned mine with rainwater. A mountain lion could have moved in later, which would explain the bones. The only proof I have of this theory is that the ground in the deepest part of the mine is extremely wet and has water flow marks leading into it. Other than that, it's pure speculation. That said, another potential explanation for both the bones and the shoes is that Connor placed them there himself in hopes of creating a viral video. People on the internet have pointed out that the bones in the video are a bit too clean for something left in a muddy cave by a predator. Some have also claimed that a few of the bones look like they're inorganic fabrications. Another inconsistency in Connor's video is that he and his group keep claiming that all the shoes in the pile are kid-sized.
There's no adult shoes in there. There's no adult shoes.
He even mentioned that in the video's title, which reads, "Kids' Shoes and Bones Found in Abandoned Mine." Now, while that makes an already creepy situation even more disturbing, it's simply not true. There are plenty of adult-sized shoes visible in this pile. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll ever know what happened here for sure. It's been 6 years since the video was uploaded, and as I mentioned earlier, Connor has vanished completely from the internet ever since. Action Adventure Twins is a YouTube channel run by brothers James and Edward. The duo has been exploring dangerous and crammed caves since early 2020. Yet, despite their combined experience, one of them almost lost his life back in 2022. In January of that year, the two decided to explore the popular Petty John's Cave in Georgia. They had already explored parts of this maze-like cave multiple times before, and had even found an underground waterfall during one of their expeditions. Put simply, they were pretty confident in their ability to navigate through this cave. But unlike their previous ventures, this time they were going to tackle one of the hardest sections, the aptly named Nervous Breakdown, referring to how cavers feel when going through it. Things started off just as expected, with the pair going through the narrow and claustrophobic entrance to reach the first open area of the Pettyjohn's cave.
Whoa, entrance room.
However, it didn't take long for the cave to begin closing back again, forcing the two to squeeze through tiny passageways. But that was only the beginning. After about 25 minutes of crawling through increasingly tighter spaces, they reached the first big obstacle, a muddy room with a narrow and steep hole in the middle. They had to carefully walk around this hole to progress. A single slip and falling into the narrow hole and possibly getting injured. And given the lack of safe footing around the hole, it would have been near impossible for the other person to pull them out. After successfully navigating around this obstacle, they finally arrived at the entrance to Nervous Breakdown. Unfortunately for them, things weren't looking good. The area surrounding this entrance had collapsed some time ago, making it very difficult to figure out the path ahead. After looking around for a bit, Edward eventually found the real entrance and was excited to go in. He genuinely couldn't wait to find out what was down there and began his descent, leaving his brother behind in case something bad happened. What he didn't realize was that this was about to be one of the worst decisions he'd ever make. Because after descending for a few minutes, Edward called for his brother
The tape.
without much trouble. The next person, however, wasn't as fortunate. This was Bob Johnson, the man we mentioned earlier. His crawl through the tube wasn't off to a good start, as he was already having issues with the comparatively wider sections of the passage. He then somehow managed to reach the tightest part of this treacherous section, but that's where his luck ran out. He was completely stuck from the waist down, and any attempt to free himself only made the situation worse. Now, being stuck in a narrow cave like this is extremely stressful on its own. The walls close in on you, and every movement feels like it's pushing you further into the tight space. Panic sets in as you realize just how little room you have to maneuver, and with each failed attempt to free yourself, the fear intensifies. But as if the confined space wasn't enough to make his heart race, Bob now had to contend with something far more terrifying: the rapidly flowing water. Water makes any caving venture 10 times worse. In a dry cave, even if you're stuck, you still have time to think and plan your escape. But when water starts to rise, the situation shifts from bad to life-threatening. The feeling of water creeping up around you in an already claustrophobic space is a nightmare on its own. The real danger with water, however, is that you have mere minutes before drowning becomes a very real possibility. Bob knew this possibility all too well. He gave his all to free himself. Unfortunately, the water was quickly filling up his suit, making it even more difficult to squeeze through. But when the situation seemed hopeless, one of the members had an idea that ended up saving Bob's life. Instead of pushing forward, the members behind him tried pulling him back, and it worked.
Yeah, it looks tight. Golly, I get it. Pull in!
Bob was finally free, though his troubles
I'm gonna. That's all for now, guys. I'll come back to that. I'm gonna make a brew.